He paid for a VIP seat, just like everyone else. But before takeoff, a flight attendant asked him to move to make room for another passenger. What happened next became the biggest news story in the country. Darius Colton just wanted to go home. He wasn't thinking about politics, protests, or making statements. His mind was elsewhere: his bed, his kids, whether he'd make it to that little barbecue spot in Lindale before it closed. His keynote speech at the Minneapolis Tech Futures Conference had gone better than expected. A standing ovation, a few handshakes from investors. But now, walking through Terminal 1 at MSP Airport, he craved nothing but silence. The VIP boarding pass was a small reward and extra legroom window seat, early boarding. He had paid for it, just like everyone else. After 3 days of meetings and conversations, this was his first moment of peace. Darius was a tall man, built like a former linebacker, though these days he spent more time behind screens than in the gym. His beard was graying at the edges, but his eyes stayed sharp, the kind of sharpness that comes from having to work twice as hard for the same recognition. Charlotte was home now, but he had spent years in endless business trips, short-term rentals, and the instability others took for granted. He didn't wear expensive suits, didn't try to impress. That day he wore jeans, a track jacket, and comfortable sneakers. She knew that real power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just existed. The first sign that something was wrong came just before takeoff. Darius was checking his emails when a flight attendant with a strained smile approached. Her voice was polite but absent of warmth. "Mr. Colton, we have a small request. One of our frequent flyers is seated in the back. Would you mind switching seats with him?" Darius frowned. "Excuse me, why?" She hesitated for a second. "He's a member of our loyalty program. It's a preferred request." There had to be some mistake. Darius glanced around. The cabin was half empty. They weren't offering him another VIP seat. They were pointing him to row 24. He smiled politely. "I'd prefer to stay, thanks. I paid for this seat." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course. I'll let the team know." That seemed to be the end of it, but a few minutes later, the senior flight attendant arrived. "Sir, we understand you declined to move, but unfortunately, we need you to switch seats. It's company policy when dealing with premium level passengers." "Executive level?" Darius asked. "No, but he's a member of our premium loyalty program. We're asking for your cooperation." "I paid for this seat in advance," Darius said calmly. There was no conflict. Passengers nearby started listening in. The flight attendant lowered his voice. "We can offer you a complimentary drink and a $75 voucher for the inconvenience." "So, this person is more important to your airline than I am?" Darius asked. No response. The flight attendant just nodded and walked away. 5 minutes later, another crew member arrived, this time with a tablet and a cold smile. No explanation, no eye contact. "Mr. Colton, please gather your things. You've been reassigned to seat 24B. Darius froze. No warning, no choice. He looked at her, then at his seat. His chest tightened, not from anger, but disbelief. He stood up slowly. Everything was silent, but every pair of eyes in the cabin was watching. Walking through the plane was the hardest part. People pretended not to stare. A young woman in 12C whispered, "That's not right." An older man nodded at him, sympathy or guilt, who knew? Darius said nothing. He placed his bag in the overhead bin, sat between a teenager in basketball shorts and an elderly woman who kept asking if this flight was going to St. Louis. Somewhere behind him, a phone camera kept recording. Seat 2A was now occupied by a man in his 40s, businesslike, confident. He never looked back. He was the kind of man who always got what he wanted, without thinking about who had to move for him. Darius didn't tweet, didn't call anyone, he just looked out the window. But in row 22, the teenager who had watched the scene uploaded the video to TikTok. No dramatic music, no hashtags, just 4 words. He paid for this, and within minutes, it started spreading. Darius didn't know. He was thinking about his daughter, his son's basketball game, his wife's broken shoes. Real things, ordinary things. But even from the back, he could hear the clink of glasses in the VIP section, the laughter, the jokes, as if nothing had happened. When he finally checked his phone, there were 3 missed calls and a text from a colleague. "Dude, you're trending." He clicked the link. There was the video, there was him. And the comments, "We're still doing this in 2025? This man handled it better than I would have. Air Bright, seriously? But one comment hit the hardest. Why do we keep pretending this is normal? Darius locked his screen and leaned back. The teenager in basketball shorts nudged him. People are with you. You should say something. Darius exhaled slowly. Maybe. But he didn't know that by the time their plane landed, a news editor at WGN Chicago had already received the video. And while their flight descended, the airline was already losing control of the situation. Returning to Chicago, Darius finally answered Monique Glass's call. Mr. Colton, thank you for picking up. I'll be brief. We've seen the video. We understand this wasn't the week you planned, but if you're willing to talk, we'd like to give you a chance to share your side of the story. Darius remained silent for a moment before asking, If I agree, what do you expect to hear? We're not here to give you a script, Monique replied. He paused. I don't want to be part of a spectacle. I'm not looking to start a war, but people should know how normal it all seemed when it happened. Monique didn't try to persuade him. Let us know if you change your mind, was all she said. He changed his mind about an hour later, not because he wanted attention, but because the messages kept coming. Strangers, parents, workers from other industries wrote, This happened to me too. One flight attendant anonymously admitted, They told me to do this before moving a less loyal passenger to the seat of someone who spent more. It was wrong. I've hated myself for it ever since. I'm sorry this happened to you. That evening, Darius sat in front of his webcam. He wore a plain dark t-shirt, no logos. He looked directly into the lens, cleared his throat, took a deep breath, and quietly said, I want to tell you what happened to me on flight 624. He didn't yell, didn't accuse he, simply explained how fast it all happened, how calmly everyone acted, how no one even questioned what it meant to be publicly removed from a seat because someone else had more loyalty points. I don't want free tickets. I'm not looking for revenge, he said, but it's important to ask, how many people are treated this way when there's no camera around? The video was just under 4 minutes long. By morning, it had 6.3 million views, and the number kept growing. Darius had never sought attention. He preferred to stay in the background, work quietly, celebrate small wins. But now, his voice echoed in waiting rooms, on car radios, during office lunch breaks. People quoted his words about those who had faced the same but had no proof. The next morning, his inbox was flooded with interview requests. Some outlets offered trips, others brand partnerships. He turned down almost all of them. He agreed to only 2 interviews, one for a local news channel in Chicago, another for NPR. He wanted the conversation to be real, not turned into a dramatic spectacle. Sitting across from the Chicago news anchor, he looked as calm as he had in the video. Hands folded, posture relaxed, gaze steady. Mr. Colton, people are calling you a symbol, even a hero. What do you think about that? The anchor asked carefully. Darius almost smiled. I just bought a ticket, and then I got thrown out of my seat. That doesn't make me a hero, it makes me human. He paused. I think this story resonated because it's familiar. Everyone has had a moment when, even without words, they were made to feel, you don't belong here. The anchor stayed silent. Darius continued. But what struck me the most wasn't what happened. It was that no one apologized. No one said, hey, we messed up. They just followed the script, smiles, procedures, vouchers. But they never saw me. That clip spread like wildfire. He didn't mention race, didn't shout, didn't accuse, but his words spoke louder than any official airline statement. They were real, and that was their power. Meanwhile, at Airbright's headquarters in San Diego, emergency meetings were in full swing. The legal department was called in. The PR team drafted and scrapped statements. Some argued they needed to apologize publicly. Others feared it would be an admission of guilt. Shareholders were already panicking, but what hit them wasn't a lawsuit or the outrage of a celebrity. It was the flood of ordinary people sharing their own stories. One woman recounted how, at 8 months pregnant, she was forced to give up her seat because a preferred passenger wanted to sit next to a colleague. A man admitted that 3 years ago, he had been downgraded because a frequent flyer was late to boarding. Hundreds of stories poured in, and their message was clear. This wasn't an exception. It was a system. Darius read every single one. He couldn't reply to them all, but for the first time in a long while, he felt he wasn't alone in this. He was invited to a roundtable discussion hosted by the Department of Transportation. When it was his turn to speak, he stood and told his story, not for sympathy, but for clarity. I don't need you to like me. I need you to listen. Because if you don't, this will happen again. And next time, there might not be a camera around. After the discussion, a young employee from another airline approached him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've worked in this industry for 3 years. We see this more than we admit." "And what do you do about it?" Darius asked. She looked down. "I try." But Darius wasn't just trying anymore. He was acting, and the airlines were about to feel it. The consequences came quickly. By Thursday, just 4 days after the incident, Airbright Airlines released a second statement. No vague regrets, no PR spin. "We sincerely apologize to Mr. Darius Colton. Our internal investigation has confirmed that the protocol was misapplied. We take full responsibility for what occurred on Flight 624. The entire crew involved has been temporarily suspended. Effective immediately, we are implementing mandatory staff training on new standards." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. The headlines followed. Airbright fires crew after viral video. Airline reconsiders loyalty policy. For the passengers on that flight, it was a surprise. For Jenny Ruiz, it was the start of industry-wide change. The teenager who recorded the video posted a new clip. "Thank you, Darius. Most adults would have just ignored this." Others began tagging him in their posts. New promises, new policies, leaked internal memos. Darius didn't respond. He didn't need to. He had already become something bigger than a headline.